right now we need to talk about other serious issues, one being Nigeria's debt profile. It's very, very worrisome. Nigeria's economic growth and Nigeria's debt problem. What can we do about it? The last time we checked, we have a debt of over 43 trillion, and that is coming from 2 trillion in 2015. So from 2015 to 2023, we are now at over 43 trillion. Thankfully to His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the subsidy removal will now allow us to save some trillions, and hopefully we can start doing something about this debt. Now, he has also stated that Nigeria can no longer afford to dedicate 90% of our revenue to debt servicing. So we're going to discuss these issues. Joining me is an economist all the way from the United Kingdom, Gospel Obele, and also in our Abuja studio, joining me is Adiola Ogun Bodede. Welcome, Adiola. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So let's get straight into it. How did we get here? From a debt profile of 2 trillion in 2015 to 43 trillion, over 43 trillion in 2023.
Basically, I will say that the challenge actually started with Jonathan government. Immediately, President Obasanjo handed over to Yar'Adua. It was an unhealthy economy. After that time, we made a payment of $18 billion, and the other part was forgiven. And we made payment of 12, and 18 was forgiven. Then after that, Yar'Adua started generating some level of debt in the economy, though it was not as much. But when Jonathan government came into being, a whole lot were brought into being, some challenges which they were able to manage effectively then with Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. They were able to manage the economy very well at that time. But at that time, they had problem paying salary. And they've started generating this level of debt, which you mentioned. At the time PDP was to leave in 2015, they have about 2 trillion, as you mentioned. But when Buhari government came into being, we actually found a double problem in the economy. One was, immediately it came in, the problem of Jonathan government coming in was there. Then it got in, and there was an inflation, what do you call it, recession in the economy in 2016. So for him to be able to reflate the economy, the model of what America actually used was proposed to him, and he, at that time, took it upon himself to start getting funds from outside to help cushion the economy. But as a result of that, because what we're getting was good for the economy for them, for that government at that period in time, they now decided to make it a daily occurrence, a yearly occurrence. They were talking $6 billion, $5 billion here and there. So as a result of that, that government became a government of debt, because they were getting $21 billion from CBN for ways and means. They had to get from IMF and some other multilateral organizations. And yes, I think that was the reason why we have what we have as of today. But as you have said also, the President Tinubu has actually said with the removal of subsidy, they were able to help save some money, which we can use to pay the debts. And I believe that maybe subsequently there should be a reduction in what we have already. And we already know that most of these debts were denominated in dollar. So yes, with the
100%.
So as a result of as a result of the devaluation of the dollar, we actually saw a spike in that. So I think when we are beginning to look at it in naira terms, the level of debt will grow up, because pari passu, the dollar rate. But if things get better, I believe that apart from the payment, the issue of debt sustainability will be a factor going forward if we should allow this government to run. I like the fact that you stated if things get better. I'm not an expert on economy, but I'm fully aware that a lot of countries, even first world countries, have a lot of debts. And economists will argue that when you borrow, you sort of also increase your GDP, your gross domestic product, right? How come we haven't seen any growth despite all of the borrowing? Because personally, on the personal note, I do not have an issue with 43 trillion. I have an issue with the fact that
we have not seen commensurate growth as a result of that debt?
Normally, when it is being touted for a government to borrow, there should be a project they are targeting to actualize, either infrastructural project or something that will improve the welfare of the people, something that is going to be productive to the economy in such a way that it is going to engender growth. But we find out that most of the time when we take loans in Nigeria, the fund is usually not used for the purpose for which it is being given. And as a result of that, some of the money will be stolen, some will be kept where it should not be kept, some will be taken to where it should not be taken. And as a result of that, when you have a time lag to complete a particular project, for example, if I say, like I mentioned the other time, we have rail line. We have taken loan for our rails to be put in place, for us to have rail in place. But as a result of that, we delayed, especially like the one in Lagos and the one even the federal government won. So we delayed. So the time lag, the loan issue, the time for the period of the loan, maybe it's for 3 years. After 3 years, you're supposed to pay. The project was not completed even in 6 years. Yeah. Then what do we now have to do? You started paying back loan for a project you have even not started running. You have started paying loan on infrastructure you have not completed. As a result of that, we found this challenge going here and here, especially in our economy. So I would say corruption is a major challenge. Delays in government implementation is a major challenge. And what do I call, where you would do something environment in government. You decide to take a particular money which was supposed to be given to a particular thing, you take it to another project.
Right.
And as a result of that, we have bills to pay, but the projects are not completed.
I agree with you. We're going to get back to that. Let us hear Gospel's thoughts.
That's the reason why
welcome to the program.
Hi, Hero. Good day.
Good day. Good day. And taking off from where Adiola stopped, how can we actually deal with this issue of mismanagement? Because that seems to be even a bigger problem than actually borrowing.
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm happy with the fact that we've agreed in one way or the other about what you said, that there is a problem of mismanagement than the problem of just borrowing. More developed economies have larger debt portfolios. You know, the big question is, what do you borrow for and where do you invest those monies? Debt financing are a form of development finance. Debt rather as a form of development finance, you know, based upon the policy instruments that you're seeking to take forward. So first and foremost, it's a cultural problem, you know, and it's very important to set that tone. It's a cultural problem. The problem of waste, mismanagement, maintenance, and all of these narratives are a cultural problem. So we need to first deal with the root causal elements of, you know, how we manage resources in Nigeria, you know, who gets what, why, and when, you know, and also how you scale continuity of project commitments and all of that. And we're not trying to say this is a government problem. It's an individual problem to a very large extent in Nigerian space. Many Nigerians still have financial management issues, problem of budgeting, you know, raising finance, managing monies, accountability and all that. So when you scale that at the federal level, that's technically what you're saying. So yes, we need to first deal with the core cultural problem of waste, mismanagement and all that. Once we begin to deal with that, you realize that the problem is not really debt, or rather how those monies are being used.
All right. The president has also said that we can no longer afford to dedicate 90% of our revenue to debt servicing, and they're going to come up with a new plan. What do you think of that? Gospel?
Yes, I agree. That's a very valid perspective to hold. But first off, it's important for me to state that the Nigerian economy is already diversified, all right? The Nigerian economy is currently and already diversified. The big ticket issue is that we do not have a diversified / productive revenue base, all right? And there's still lots of leakages around revenue mobilization. So questions now border heavily on how do you take 55% of the economy that is largely services driven, you know, and scale that All right, we do not have a national services policy as it stands right now. All right, we have loads and loads of graphic designers, web developers who work remotely, but we don't have that national data set to say what intelligent path do we need to, begin to channel the services sector such that we can earn strategic revenue from that. We have loads and loads of Nigerians who are in the diaspora, and many more are going outside the country. How do you design an official, incentive-based pathway, to encourage or inspire foreign diaspora remittances into the country? How do you take 94.5% of the economy that is non-oil and ensure that loads and loads of SMEs who are export-ready actually have the ability to get their product, made in Nigeria, value processed in Nigeria, and then those products are selling in the shops in Tesco's, in the Tesco and Sainsbury's stores in the UK. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Until we can do that successfully and scale that at large, we cannot deal with the revenue problem. So the big ticket issue is diversifying the revenue base and looking at low-hanging fruits across the services and non-oil sector and scaling that for strategic access to market engagement globally and even regionally.
That is very apt, Gospel. Adiola, speaking of how to diversify revenue collection, what is this current government doing about it? And what would you advise that they do about it?
Already, the federal government of Nigeria is taking a good step in that regard. The coordinating minister of the economy, Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, has actually come up with his team to actually help the government to get back to shape. Then, apart from that, we also have the team led by Taiwo Oyedele, who is the tax reform team. And from what he said a week or two ago, he actually gave us a good account of how we have been found lacking in generating the necessary taxation in this economy. He told us in South Africa, which is a second, or between Egypt and South Africa, they usually come second in the economy of Africa. So that in South Africa, they actually generate about 400 billion or so, or 400 trillion naira, less in calculation, from tax. But in Nigeria, we only have about 13 trillion being generated in that same, and we are more than them. Our economy is better than that of South Africa. So we could actually utilize. So they are putting measures in place to see how best they can increase the tax base or use the existing tax base and generate more. Because many people in the current system are not paying the necessary taxation or taxes. So that is one part. Then on the federal government end, how best can they actually get this thing done? We found out that most of the things being done in this country, most of our products are not exportable. And when they cannot export them, we are going to have this kind of problems even in place because we don't generate necessary income. I want to make reference to what Peter said the other time, that when you give capacity to people, either they're engaged, they are doing one job or the other, that is when they can pay tax. That is when they can bring in income. And that is the reason, that is when you can actually get funds from them. So when the economy is actually productive in its sense, in every sphere, I look at the economy of Nigeria, I said we don't need to suffer if everything is put in place. So I want to call upon this government that they should put every measure in place. Apart from what the tax reform teams are doing, we should put all measures in place from the custom to the NIPC, those who are in charge of exportation of our products. Already they're also doing a good thing because the federal government is putting some money, I think about 125 billion, to support the manufacturing sector. So by the time they are able to support them and they become more productive, people's taxation will come in, then we will be able to export goods and get funds into the economy. Then, like Gospel said the other time, we have diversified the economy. We can still do more. So we diversify the economy the more, increase our productive base, and let everywhere be filled with productivity. We have 200 million people. And when I look at the GDP of Nigeria, $400 billion plus, and we have 200, that means every individual, we are only generating about $2 or $20 billion, $20 each. That is below our capacity. So I want to beg everyone to get up and get doing.
So we've been talking about diversification.
Case may be. So we are generating below our capacity.
The issue of diversification, every single government comes in and every single government has the agenda of diversification. We want to diversify and look at the non-oil sectors. I don't think we've made so much progress on that particular diversification, especially as regards to the non-oil sector. How do you think we can, this time around, because we're at crossroads, globally, the demand for oil is reducing. Countries abroad are moving away from the power gospel. Countries abroad are moving away from the carbon emission and they're moving to cleaner sources of energy. So it's better that we actually take cue and just move away from also like to reduce the carbon emission and move to the non-oil sectors. How can we really invest in the non-oil sector of the economy, Gospel?
Thank you very much, Hero. Very importantly, again, I need to state that the Nigerian economy is already diversified. You already have 94 to 95% of the economy as non-oil in terms of its representation and construct of economic activities that are being undertaken in that space. So you cannot get quote unquote more diversified than that. You now have the oil sector playing about 5 to 6%. What has happened is that the body language, the policy focus, the trajectory of how the market has evolved over time and how we earn monies or income has been built heavily around the oil and gas sector. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So we need to do more in terms of representation and organization of markets in the non-oil space. So, and part of why I'm saying that is the fact that loads and loads of the sectors in the non-oil space are largely at infant stage, all right? There's still loads and loads of sector-related policy engagement, investment, industrialization. Take, for instance, now, 90% of activities in the agricultural space are crop production based, all right? And that's almost irrelevant. Not irrelevant, really. That is technically unproductive for the Nigerian economy right now, all right? And you have a very fair spread of agricultural representation to industrial representation and service-based economy representation. So technically, you have the raw material-based aspect of the economy. You have the industrial-based aspect of the economy. You also have the services-based. And if you look at countries that have developed over time, over the years, in many cases, they have one out of these three. You hardly find situations where many nations have all of these three at a very reasonable representation level. So the UK is heavily services-based as an economy. China is heavily manufacturing-based. But for Nigeria, we have almost the three at an almost even split. So what's happening is that our markets, our sectors are not developing at the pace of opportunities, investments, innovation that it should. When you have 90% of the agricultural economy largely built around crop production, it shows that your market is still at a very infant stage. So you can't really do much to play competitively enough to unlock the potential of that space or that market or that sector.
So are you saying we should focus? Are you saying we should focus on one particular sector? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm not saying we should focus on one. What I'm trying to say is that there needs to be a strategic approach to unlock the productivity of the non-oil market. And you also need to look at the top few sectors that would yield that investment productivity or whatever the case may be in the shortest time, all right? Look at agriculture, look at fintech, look at digital economy, look at the services block and all that. So by the time you begin to first and foremost organize the market and as much as possible provide incentives for investment and people to play into those markets and, build some form of access to market engagement as well. Meaning that the person who gets cocoa from Ibadan, give or take in the Southwest, can actually process those things via industrialization and all that, and then sell their chocolate in Zurich, in UK, in the US and all that, and get people from, who are not even Africans, purchase our product, coming from Nigeria. And until you have that cycle correctly done, you cannot earn the benefits of a 95% based non-oil sector representation. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So it's like you're having a sleeping giant in the case of things, all right? So there has to be that focus, there has to be that investment, there has to be that kind of resources. Now, note in everything I've said, I have not said formalize the sectors. Right. I have not said formalize the service space. What I'm trying to say is make productive is different from making formal.
All right. All right, Gospel. Very quickly, we're almost running out of time. Adiola, one of the issues that people keep on complaining about is government wastage in terms of our resources. In as much as we're trying to develop this nation at a very fast pace, it's very, very important for us to cut down government spending. How effective has that been? I mean, cutting down government spending in this current administration.
Yeah, cutting down government spending is good. And I think the president has come out to address this part with us. I work in the private sector, and I understand the place of having your people work on different programs and projects for you. If because you want to reduce costs, you decide to reduce, for example, some ministries that are very important to your administration programs and projects, and you load a particular ministry with so much work that they become ineffective, then the economy suffers it. What you think you want to save, you find out that you are not saving it. Please permit me to go and just address one or two issues here from what Gospel said. I will conclude with what you asked me.
Yeah, we're out of time, Adiola.
About 2 weeks ago, yeah, I'll be fast. About 2 weeks ago, I found out that cassava and tomato could actually generate the economy 7 trillion every year, but most of it are wasted. 7 trillion naira coming to the Nigerian economy will help to buoy some things in this economy, but they are wasted. This comment said they are going to have a commodity board. They should put them in place. That is one. The second part I want to mention here is that we should put necessary fiscal measures in place. Kemi Adeosun did that at the beginning, but we jettisoned it immediately she left. Put necessary fiscal measures in place. It's one of the attributes of accounting. When we have good fiscal measures in place at all levels, then we save costs, we run the government properly, everybody gets better. As of now, only a few are getting the best, and many people are suffering. And I think this government should rise up and help us to ameliorate the problems the country is facing at this time.
Thank you so very much, Adiola, and thank you so much, Gospel, for coming on the show. Rubbin Mind continues after this break. Stay with us.